Hey guys, it's Celestia, and shockingly, I'm uploading on time for the third time this month. Congrats to me on doing the bare minimum, apparently. Hopefully I'll keep it up. Today's video is going to be a Patreon special, which means almost nothing for all intents and purposes because it's fundamentally no different than any other video. The only difference is that while it's a topic I was already going to talk about from my ridiculously gigantic list of video topics, I prioritized it over the others because it got votes from my patrons as one of the 2 winning themes for the month of June. If you'd like to have a say in which topics get prioritized for some but not all of my future content, please head over to my Patreon, link in the description, for more information. Anyway, that gives you absolutely no relevant information, let me start over. Today, we're going to be talking about art habits. Or more specifically, the worst art habits that, in my opinion, do more harm than good, assuming they do any good at all. But before we get into that, I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, WingFox. If you're not interested in saving money on courses that will objectively take your art skills to the next level, you can skip to the timestamp on screen, but I'll know and I'll judge you, and I hope you can live with that. So if you guys have watched my videos for a while, you might remember WingFox from my video on improving your art as much as I did in 1 year. While they did sponsor that one as well, I would honestly have ended up recommending them in it anyway, because platforms like theirs offer the kind of learning that saves artists years when it comes to improvement, and I would have been doing you guys a disservice to not discuss that. I took my first online art course in 2020, I believe, and since then I've been trying courses from all over the internet: Skillshare, Domestika, Gumroad, and a litany of other options. Because right from day one they taught me that I've never learned all I can learn when it comes to art. And I've never walked away from a course thinking, yeah, I knew all that. What a waste of time. Like, okay, you know that post that's like, on purpose, I am going to hate you on purpose. These courses look you dead in the eye and say, on purpose, I'm gonna make you look at every aspect of the way you make art and think about it on purpose. And that's so valuable. Online learning, especially with art, allows you to effectively view an actually affordable catalog of artistic methods and techniques, watch how they're implemented, and decide whether or not you want to use them in your own work, or even to what extent you want to use them in your own work. That's what's so valuable about this, particularly in relation to art. Like, in most cases, online learning is fantastic, but in a lot of fields, there's one right way and one wrong way to do a thing. And while learning about that thing more once you already know the right and wrong ways, it's still valuable. It doesn't have a gigantic, visible, tangible impact on your ability to do that thing. And of course, learning doesn't have to serve an everyday useful purpose. You can learn for the sake of learning, and you should. But art isn't like that. There are obviously some rules, the fundamentals, that do dictate some aspects of art that are right and wrong. But for the most part, it's not that straightforward. Unlike other fields of study in which you learn the best way and then you're done, at least practically speaking, with art, you learn some of the base right ways and then you learn options. Which is why sites like WingFox have essentially endless value, because when you take their courses and you learn how the artists teaching them create their work, you get a brand new glimpse into a new, totally different catalog of options and techniques every single time. You don't have to use all of them or any of them, because there's no right or wrong to it. But that's what's so freeing and valuable. You can decide exactly how much you want to use those techniques and let them influence your work, and you can determine what aspects are interesting to think about but might not be something you want to personally implement. I bring this part of online learning up because after using WingFox for several months now, I've found that this, above all else, is what they do best. With their first sponsorship, I was able to try out a course called Level Up Your Digital Painting Skills, and with this one, I was able to try out the sequel effectively, a 2.0 upgraded version. And after using so many different platforms for online learning, for art specifically, for over 2 years now, I can confidently say that WingFox takes it one step further. They go the extra mile. Their courses are separated into sections, so if you're an absolute beginner, their courses will teach you everything from how to determine lighting, how to gather references, how to find inspiration, how to set up the brushes they provide and use them to their fullest extent, how to implement angles and references to give you the best possible understanding of anatomy, and so much more than I've ever seen any similar platform teach. But if you're not a beginner, you can use their sections, which are similar to chapters on YouTube, but better, to skip to the particular topics that you find most valuable instead. Like, when I took the first course, there was a whole, 3 chapters worth of developing environments and weapons. And while that's awesome, it wasn't what I was interested in. Now, developing my concept art portfolio, I'm going to reflect on those sections back like, holy shit, this is some chef's kiss content. But even before it was relevant to me, I just skipped past it to the character art section and found just as much value in that part of the course. I've said it before and I'll say it again, Wingfox is so clearly made by artists for artists. And the way they exemplify that through their exceptional, artist-tailored, user-friendly courses is exactly why I'm still here talking about this right now. Yeah, they paid me to shout them out, but I fulfilled that quite a few minutes ago now. I'm still talking about them now because they are the best at what they do, and I have seen that firsthand. Whether you want to use their techniques subtly and gradually to begin and improve, or go hard right off the bat and take your existing work to an industry level, anyone of any skill level can genuinely find exceptional value in Wingfox's content, and I'm endorsing them much harder than I was paid to because I believe in the quality of their work. Thank you to Wingfox for letting me try out yet another fantastic course, and please check them out. They're currently having a mid-year sale until June 23rd for 25% off of their courses with code MY25, and I will personally be taking advantage of that and investing in quite a few of their other courses before that discount is gone, so I encourage you guys to do the same. I've included their information and a link in the description, so please check them out, because I wouldn't be going this hard for a company I didn't support this passionately. Alright, welcome back to people who skipped, and thank you as always to those who didn't. And now let's get into the video topic. I've done several videos on art advice that's been, in my opinion, both good and bad. But art habits are different. Advice makes you consciously think about something that you're doing with your art. But at least for me, it's the subconscious art habits that I'm not even always aware that I'm doing that are potentially even more beneficial or dangerous, depending on whether they're good or bad, because they're your default mode. They're the things that you do with your art without thinking about it, so they're inevitably going to be the things that you do a lot more regularly than the things that you actively choose to do when following advice. And as I've grown as an artist, I've become increasingly aware of just how ridiculously many bad habits I actually have. So in this video, I'm going to go over some of the biggest ones, so that hopefully, if you guys are like me and also do these things, you'll at least be a little more aware of them and how they can be detrimental. I'm going to start with the physical bad art habits because they're the most obvious, the most common, and the easiest to fix, for the most part. The first and most annoying one is not taking breaks while you're drawing, and it's the most annoying because fuck, who wants to? When you're in the middle of working on a piece, especially if you're really enjoying it or have a deadline, I don't know anyone who enjoys the idea of interrupting what you're doing because your stupid fucking body needs circulation or whatever. It's infuriating, it's tedious, and subsequently, if you're anything like me, you just don't do it. But while that's understandable, it's also bad, because unfortunately, those irritating assholes telling you that your body needs you to take breaks are correct. I don't know how many times I've lost track of time while working, not taken any breaks, and ended up finally walking away from my computer in an exhausted daze only to realize that I haven't blinked or moved my legs in 4 hours. And now my eyes hurt, one leg is asleep and the other one is in agony. I haven't consumed water in I don't know how long, and my wrist and hand have been drawing for so long without stopping that they've turned into the claw again, and any attempt to unclaw them is met with instant pain. And I don't think I'm the only one regularly facing that realization either. I now have hourly alarms to take small breaks while working, and while I will admit that I frequently snooze them and keep working anyway, it at least forces me to acknowledge how long I've been working, and that I at least need to take a break soon. Body and physical health aside, it's also helpful for your art to break this habit and take more breaks, because you're not going to be seeing your work as objectively or clearly as you could be if you've been staring at it and nothing else for 6 hours. The next habit goes hand in hand with that one, and it's specifically about your drawing hand. And I think you know what I'm gonna say, because everyone says it and everyone is sick of hearing it, including me, but it's true. You gotta do wrist exercises and you gotta do them often. Carpal tunnel is a real risk, and you could permanently destroy the hand that you rely on to make art if you overwork it too hard for too long without doing these exercises. I'm gonna put a graphic on screen here for some of the best ones, because while it's easy to get away with f***ing your wrist up when you're young, it will objectively and irreversibly do damage over a long enough period of time. So try to take care of the thing that you literally need to make art. Similarly, I know I've mentioned this particular dumb habit of mine before, but I have a tendency to hold my pen in a f***ing death grip. I press really hard, and I hold the thing like it's the thread that my mental health is barely hanging on by, and letting go means disaster. It's awful for your hand, and in my experience has led to more instances of the aforementioned claw and resulting stiffness and pain than I'd like to admit. Consciously trying to loosen your grip strength will save you a lot of pain and also make your brush strokes smoother and help you control your line weight, so there's really no reason not to try to fix this habit. Finally, the last two physical bad art habits are also very related because they also fall into the category of things you don't realize you're doing because you're too focused on your art to be even somewhat aware. And they're bad posture and drawing too close to your screen or paper. For me, when I'm drawing on my iPad, my posture tends to be less of an issue because I can position it and myself more casually. But when I'm sitting at my desk and drawing on my tablet monitor, posture is a huge issue for me. And this is a hard habit to fix, too, because sometimes, depending on your setup or the way you make art, you're sometimes gonna have to lean in a way that's detrimental to your posture, and sometimes for extended periods of time. But at least trying to keep an eye on it and sitting up straighter whenever possible will help ease the back pain that every artist knows all too well, and it's something I've started using that break alarm to remind myself of, too. And in terms of drawing too close to your screen or paper, that's also sometimes unavoidable when you're focusing on details, and it's not quite as much of a problem on paper or low-light screens, but the brighter the screen, the worse it's going to be for your eyes if you do it too much, so when you can avoid it, you should. For digital artists, it can also help not to draw on a pure white canvas and lower the background that you're sketching on to a medium brightness gray, because eye strain sucks, and lessening it is never a bad idea. Alright, so this next section of bad art habits will specifically cover behavioral habits, the way that you approach and think about art rather than the specific techniques that you use while creating it, which I will cover afterwards in the final section. And the first and most significant bad behavioral habit I'm personally very guilty of in terms of art is overworking myself, and more specifically, romanticizing overworking myself. I know that it's unhealthy that art is my entire life and I have almost no time for hobbies or friends, and I know that that's a problem. But because making art a career is difficult and time-consuming, that's kind of just the way it has to be right now, especially during particular crunch times. And that's gonna be a part of any job or any study or anything that you're passionate about and want to succeed at. Sometimes that thing is gonna have to take up too much of your time and you'll have no choice but to overwork yourself. But at least in my case, I tend to approach that necessity by romanticizing that burnout and overworking so that I can deal with it better and not get deterred by it. What I mean is that to avoid letting it get me down when I have to spend all my time working, I start thinking about it like it's a good thing. Like having art and subsequently work be my entire life and identity is glamorous, or it makes me successful, or it gives my life meaning, so on. Like by making every waking moment productive, I'm succeeding at what I'm doing. And it's a good thing to be completely obsessed with making art at all times. When you make your 6th cup of coffee and you tell yourself it's quirky and fun and you're like a protagonist in a movie chugging caffeine to get through their work in a glamorous, appealing, fun way, it can work to get you through long periods of needing to overwork yourself, but at least for me, it becomes more of a problem when you keep up that mentality even when you don't need to. And it's a hard line to draw. I frequently find myself choosing to do way more art studies than I need to, or taking on way more projects or bigger projects than I have time for, or choosing finishing another piece over playing some Animal Crossing or talking to a friend. Because even when I do have some free time to not devote to art, I've romanticized productivity so obsessively and severely that if I'm not filling every waking moment with it, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And it can lead to burnout, exhaustion, and a really unhealthy relationship with your art if you don't keep it under control, or at least as close to under control as it possibly can be. This also ties in well with the next bad habit, which is pushing yourself too hard with your art. If improvement is your goal, it's naturally important to push yourself to achieve it, and that's good and normal. But if you're pushing yourself so hard that every piece just ends up disappointing you because it's not as good as you want it to be, you're gonna end up hating your art and art as a whole. You gotta try to consciously set reasonable expectations for improvement so you don't end up disappointed and discouraged. And while actively studying art is integral to getting better at it, studying all the time and never just letting yourself enjoy your art for the sake of enjoying it is gonna suck all the joy out of it eventually. Everything in moderation, I guess, although I will admit that that's a lot easier said than done. Similarly, and I've mentioned this before, another dumb habit I'm guilty of is only drawing pieces with the intention of finishing them. Whether it's because I want to sell it, post it, share it, whatever, it stops me from sketching for fun or doing enough studies because all of my art has to serve a purpose or achieve a goal, and I can't just doodle. It's exhausting, draining, and it stifles the ever-loving shit out of my creativity. Not to mention adds a lot of pressure to everything that I draw. Would not recommend it. Art shouldn't always have to accomplish something. It can just be art for art's sake sometimes. Finally, the last habit in this section is one that I've been actively working on fixing and making some real progress with, but it's still something that I absolutely struggle with. and it's staying in your comfort zone all the time. Everyone's comfort zone is different, but because art improvement is so heavily reliant on experimentation with new techniques and methods, only using the techniques that you're familiar with or drawing subject matter that you know well is inevitably going to stifle that improvement. There's nothing wrong with drawing pretty Pinterest girls, and I've said that before in its own whole ass video, and it's a hill I will happily still die on. But you do need to mix it up every once in a while and push yourself, at least if you're drawing to improve rather than drawing to have fun, in which case, ignore this part. Like, if that's all you draw, you're gonna get really good at drawing that, but your ability to draw anything else is gonna suffer and stagnate. Whether it means experimenting with a new way of shading, a new perspective, a new type of character, a new type of lighting, a new environment, the point is doing new things with your art is something that you have to try every once in a while and regularly if you want to improve. And while I completely understand wanting to avoid it because you don't want to be bad at it, it's also the only way to stop being bad at it. Okay, last section. Let's talk about the actual technical bad art habits. The bad habits that pertain directly to the way that you draw. God knows I still have more than enough of these myself, but I'm working on them, at least the ones I'm aware of. The first one that I've largely kicked is not using reference or using 1 or 2 references per piece. It's another thing I've talked about a lot and will not stop talking about, so I'll only briefly go over it here to avoid repeating myself for the millionth time. But even if you're confident in your ability to draw something without a reference, you can still draw it better with one, so you probably should. I know it can be annoying to gather a million pieces of reference for every aspect of the piece you're working on, but it does pay off. The next one is a habit that I've actually completely kicked and almost immediately started seeing improvement in my work, and it's avoiding drawing hands and feet. I know, I get it, they suck to draw if you're not good at it yet, and they're infuriating and tedious to get right for the first while. But being like young me and just hiding the hands and feet of your subject is not doing you any favors, even if it is an easy temporary solution, because it's never gonna get easier if you don't force yourself to do it and learn. I can confidently say that since kicking this habit, I've actually started to like drawing hands. And while I still hate drawing feet, I'm at least a little bit better at it than I used to be, and I'm sure I'll gradually start hating them less as my skill at it improves. Conversely, this habit is one that I'm still very guilty of because I only recently realized how much I was doing it, and it's ignoring perspective. I think I developed this particular habit by avoiding drawing backgrounds for a really long time, which is another bad habit to avoid in and of itself. But because I only recently started doing them, I don't have a lot of experience drawing them right. I frequently forget to consider the way that objects and subjects will look based on the perspective of the viewer, especially in terms of the way that I draw any items in the foreground, and it comes out looking like the piece is being viewed from multiple perspectives. It's also something that comes from using multiple references for the same piece, because I tend to forget that while using reference for the way that an item looks is good, using a lot of different ones means I need to be very conscious of the different angles that they're being viewed at, and either find references in which that angle is consistent, or consciously modify the angle I draw that reference at. It's one of the harder things I've had to work on, and I'm still not good at it. But it's really important if you want to improve, and given that I do, it's a habit I'm going to try to work very hard to fix, and I'd recommend anyone who struggles with it to do the same. Actually, the topic of backgrounds is one I'm going to revisit here with the next habit too, because it's another one I had to actively force myself to fix quite a while ago. It's not just in relation to backgrounds, but more about the mentality, which is if no one will see a part of what you're drawing in the finished piece, you don't have to draw it at all. Whether it's a character's body part that will be covered with clothes, or a part of the background that'll end up being hidden by the character or a thing. The urge to just not draw it and save yourself the time and effort is strong. And trust me, I understand. But if you give in to that habit and just don't draw it, there will more than likely be inconsistencies in the anatomy, the perspective, the structural integrity of a building, whatever. It's worth it to at least sketch a simple bare bones version of it to make sure that everything lines up right, even if it's a part of the piece that no one will ever see. Similarly, when it comes to sketches, a dumbass habit I'm still way too fucking guilty of is trying to make them perfect. Either putting way too much detail into them before realizing I've made a mistake, and then having to redo all that detail when I could have just done a loose sketch without it first to nail down the anatomy and composition, or spending 15 hours erasing and undoing the same sketch to try to make it perfect, when the point of a sketch is that it doesn't have to be. Fixing blatant mistakes in a sketch is one thing, but trying to make it as detailed and flawless as you want your finished piece to be is just gonna frustrate you and take up an unnecessary amount of your time. Someone once told me that there was this art school exercise where you're supposed to just not use an eraser for your sketch. You just keep drawing over what you've got without erasing until it looks right. I tried it a few months ago and it completely changed the way that I approach thumbnails and rough sketches, and I would strongly recommend it to anyone with this particular habit. At least as an exercise, if not an everyday practice. Next, overblending, or underblending. This habit is harder because both are perfectly valid components of many art styles if they're done on purpose. They're only bad when you don't realize you're doing them, don't mean to do them, and subsequently don't do them right. It's still something I haven't fixed altogether, and as such can't give the greatest advice on, but paying active attention to the differences between hard shading and soft shading is never a bad idea if this is something you struggle with too. In terms of line art, the two habits I've noticed in myself and gradually overcome are not varying my line weight and not having confidence in my line art. The former is something that I've almost completely kicked by making a conscious effort to use lighter lines for intricate details and things that are farther away, and thicker lines for things that are closer. And the latter, I think it's mostly something I've just come to improve upon with time and practice. Back when I first started with art, I was so worried about fucking up my lines that I used super short, insecure, scratchy strokes. Because the longer I pressed that pen down, the more likely it was that those strokes would be wrong, wonky, messed up, whatever. But as my confidence with art grew, I was able to make a lot stronger, longer strokes, and while it was frustrating and slow to get to that point, it's certainly a habit that I'm glad I worked on fixing anyway. Okay, now this next one is just straight up embarrassing as hell to admit to, because it took me way too unjustifiably long to break this habit. And I know how important it is, I know why it's so important, and I still spent the better part of 10 years just forgetting it, over and over. I spent almost 10 years consistently forgetting to flip my canvas while drawing, and most importantly, while sketching. I know you guys have heard it before, I had heard it many times before, but I still thoroughly failed to implement it for way too long. So if you're anything like me, just stop it. Stop avoiding flipping your canvas. It makes a difference. Zooming out is also undervalued and important. And finally, the last bad habit you should avoid, blindly taking art advice, particularly from those shitty, vague, one-picture tutorials on Instagram, or TikTok, or dumbass art YouTubers who think they know what they're talking about. Obviously, that's at least half sarcastic, but the point is that half the art advice on the internet is, at best, half right and misleading, and at worst, detrimental and wrong. I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to any art advice that you see online, just to be clear. I'm saying that you should research it first and look into its validity before accepting it as good and correct. A lot of it is good and correct, but believing it to be just because it seems right or someone reputable said it could be a mistake. And there we have it. Those are some of the worst art habits that I've personally known myself to be guilty of, to varying extents, over the years. Do you guys do any of these yourselves, or am I just the next level dumbass? Are there any other bad habits that I didn't mention that you guys do struggle with? Let me know in the comments, and also let me know if there are any good habits that have helped you, because God knows I could use them. Although, in fairness, I think most artists could. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and special thank you as always to channel members Cafe Soleil, Joseph Solomon, and Unknown Code, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Blue Swanson, This Is Totally My Name, Unity, and Cora Fear for their support, and I'll see you in my next video.